come to Phoenix in February. It's great to have you with us. We've got a great program lined up for you today, but I want to start by simply asking you to stand up. Please, literally, stand up for me, if you would. I mean, I know it's a little, maybe, from the grade school, but let's stand up and let's meet. Introduce yourself to someone you don't already know. All right, find someone that you don't already know and introduce yourself. That'll do it. That's it. Good, good. All right, now you can take your seats again. Please take your seats again. I don't know if that was very pedagogically savvy of me. Get you all talking. You're notorious for conversation. And then I say, no, wait a minute, just slow down, slow down. But I did want to do that to start with because I'd like you to physically recognize, sort of feel it palpably. We are here to be together. And we're here in person, although we do have our colleagues and friends who are chiming in through the virtual portal. And we do welcome them. I don't know what to tell them this morning, and I hope they're not in Minneapolis. But for you all, I want you to take full advantage of what's often referred to as networking. I'd like to simply think of it as the extension of our great conversation, right? The tradition today is made up of great interlocutors, great friends and colleagues that we have amassed over the years. And we're here today and for the next couple of days to really relish the conversation, renew our interest in what it brings to us, and to develop some solidarity around this work, this movement. I am so pleased you're here. I want to draw your attention again to the program because beginning at 9:30, after our plenary address, which is coming, you're going to have some choices to make. There are scholarly talks that are pretty much throughout the first couple of hours of the morning. There's a leadership track for those of you interested in diving into the essentials of leadership and school culture. There are a couple of panels. One of them will be here on the main stage with Robert and Fred Turner as two brothers speaking to the arts and sciences. A host of things that are available to you. So you do want to take a look at the program. And as I told you last night, for those who were here, just be sure to RSVP, as it's called, kind of sign up on the Whova app so that we know who's there and that you can follow up with the speakers that you are introduced to in those sessions. Last night, Dana Gioia regaled us with the wonders of words, the power of poetry. He reminded us that deep, deep in our primal selves is the need to make poetry, that is to say, to use words, to speak, and more than to speak, to sing of our deepest felt experiences. And so this morning, we're going to start off this morning with some of that song that wells up in the soul and just has to find expression. Because if our tradition that we are trying to convey to the next generation means anything, it means that we must lead with beauty. And so I would like to welcome to the stage the Cicero Preparatory Academy Chorale.
Cantate Domino, cantate, cantate Domino, canticum novum, lauseus in ecclesia sanctorum, in ecclesia sanctorum. Lectetur Israel in eo, lectetur in eo, qui fecit eum, et Filii Sion, exultent in rege suo, exultent in rege suo. music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air. There must be a joy somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing everywhere. Over my head, I hear singing everywhere. Over my head, I hear singing everywhere. There must be a joy somewhere. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear singing everywhere. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a joy. There must be a joy. There must be a joy somewhere.
I hope that got you started right. Again, a reminder. Yeah, let's hear it for the Cicero Prep. Words that shape our souls. Song that speaks to spirit. The way inflection and intonation give shape, give vision for the world, what is true, what is good, what is desirable. As we've been talking about the tradition, I've gone back to a few sources. I've even solicited suggestions. I've gotten some really good ones from our scholars, from the master teachers. But one that I keep returning to, I think it was Bill McClay first introduced me to Yaroslav Pelikan's The Vindication of Tradition. It's a great, it was a Jefferson lecture 30 years ago, but it's a worthy treatise, really, on the tradition and how we should consider it, weigh it, and think about its propagation, its perpetuation. And there's an opening anecdote that he shares that I want to relate to you in part because it speaks of how tradition is always there, hanging in the eaves, or in the eaves, or waiting for us to rediscover it. But to give it expression in ways that are meaningful, again, as we heard last night, ways that speak to the heart, that's our responsibility, particularly as teachers drawing from the tradition. Well, here's the anecdote. For some of you, certainly the classicists out there who've studied their ancient languages and perhaps understood and understand the scholarship associated with how we receive the greats, there was an early 20th century scholar, Milman Parry, whose activities in this regard, trying to get to the roots of Homer, trying to get back to what it was that Homer had accomplished and where he came from and how those manuscripts, or that tradition rather, was handed down. And this is the story that Pelikan refers to when he says that Milman Parry, chased the Homeric myths into the wilds of what had recently become Yugoslavia. And he found their tribesmen still singing and reciting similar epics as they had received them and as they were in the process of handing them down. Remember, this is the 20th century, right? So comparable Homeric epics still alive and kicking. When the late Rebecca West was in Yugoslavia, a couple of years later in 1937, she experienced the same connection of the Yugoslavs with their Homeric tradition. Her husband reminded her of actions that they had witnessed, and he said, "This must have been made a million times since the world began. And yet, it seems absolutely fresh." Well, it is so in the Iliad, he continued. When one reads of a man drawing a bow or raising a shield, it is as if the dew of the world's morning lay undisturbed on what he did. That is, says Pelikan, a tradition, which, borrowing a phrase from Augustine, is beauty ever ancient, ever new. Perhaps this week we can rediscover some of that beauty, that freshness of the dew. We can take delight in it and have something of the thought-felt experience with all of our subject matter. And we're not just talking about poetry. What about chemistry or geometry? It all has the thrill of discovery if we have eyes to see. That delight, that pleasure in the thing, in the subject itself, must be what I think the Australian poet Les Murray had in mind when he says what he refers to as a feral poetry is to be found everywhere in the world if you know where to look. Everyone needs it, everyone uses it. Murray recognizes that there's a heartbeat for the things for which we're passionate, and he says, who reads poetry? Ah, the lovers, the school kids, the debaters, the generals, the crime lords, everybody reads them. And then he has this list. Listen to these words, just imagine. Use your imagination to pull up the image. Portia, Liftoff, Gaia, cool, patriarchy. What do those 5 things have in common? For some segment of the population, for some group out there, for some constituency, right, in society, those words just have meaning, they have weight, they have gravity, and they draw people together because they want to know and feel and experience cool. They want to drive a Porsche. They want to build a rocket ship. The list of delights, these feral delights, as Murray refers to them, are just deeply a part of our human nature, and we must express it. The question becomes whether we will express it well, whether we can articulate ourselves in a conversation that stretches out over the ages, which is why, again, if you have your program with you, we included a little quip from none other than the Prince of Paradox, G.K. Chesterton. It's right there inside the cover. I'll draw your attention to it because hopefully this is a decent artifact of your time with us. But we put a couple of quotes in. Chesterton's one of my favorites when he gives definition to tradition, and he says this: tradition means giving votes, to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. It's the democracy of the dead. Tradition refuses to submit to the small and arrogant oligarchy of those who merely happen to be walking about. The democracy of the dead is what we're here to rediscover this week. And it's the democratic design of the tradition that enfranchises all who have come before us. We are here to acknowledge their accomplishments and then to find out how we may build upon them well. That's precisely what our plenary speaker has chosen to do at her school, to build upon the best that's been said and done across human civilization. Katharine Birbalsingh, aka Miss Snuffy, is a teacher and reformer in the UK. She's come to national, even international attention for the work that she's done with the Michaela Community School. She was born in New Zealand, raised in Canada, studied at Oxford, French and philosophy, and eventually settled in London. But her interest in inner city schools has become her life's passion, that feral drive for Miss Birbalsingh. It's the force behind her desire to understand how to help the underserved. She's imbibed significant quantities of E.D. Hirsch and Roger Scruton, and Birbalsingh has become a fierce advocate for the energy and the empowerment of culture and civilization. She's determined to bring the tradition of civilizing thought and practice to every child within her sphere of influence, and she does it with style. Please help me welcome Katharine Birbalsingh.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's great that you got up early to come and see me this morning, because I was a bit worried, and I thought, well, I am the strictest headmistress in Britain, that's what they say. So I've arranged with Rob, you'll be pleased to know, that this side of the room at 5 o'clock we'll have detention this afternoon. And so for those who have not showed up this morning, they will be writing lines. So, who am I? Oh, I have to get through this. Where's my... there we are, there I am. So, I'm going to talk about culture. And why is culture so important? Culture is so important because we're not selling shoes. You know, the guys out there who are working in the private sector and they're selling lots of stuff, and their jobs are considered to be really hard. Society tends to look down on us teachers. They sort of think that anyone could teach, and that if you're really clever, you go into the private sector. That's how it works, you know. That's how all of you will have sat at those dinner parties where people say, "What do you do?" And you say, "I'm a teacher," and they go, "Oh, I see. You're obviously a bit of a failure." And it makes me furious because not only is teaching the best job in the world, it's also the hardest. Because the thing is, you know, Mr. Smith, who runs the shoe shop, he has to get in some red shoes and some blue shoes and some yellow shoes, and the customer comes in looking for shoes. And he turns up, he says, "Oh, I'd like some blue shoes." So he gives him some blue shoes, and he takes some money, and then off he goes. It's pretty straightforward. In schools, on the other hand, our customers don't want to be there, right? They haven't come in with an idea of getting something out of the day, you know? And it's not just out of the day. It's out of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you know? This is years in the making. Imagine if you went into a shoe shop and said, "I'm here for 8 years. Can you sort me out, please?" Mr. Smith wouldn't know what to do. Now, we're not just giving them blue shoes. We're not just giving them knowledge either. We're also trying to develop them morally. We're trying to develop them into something other than what they are now, so that they can go out into the world later and be somebody, you know? Be somebody great. So the thing that we all need to remember when other people think that we just aren't that brilliant, that we are the ones that are brilliant. We are the ones that are changing the world. And it really is true that children are the future, you know? And unfortunately, in every country, in the US, in England, everywhere, people don't get that. They don't get that the most important work in any country is the work that is done with our children. And therefore, those of us who are working in the industry of education are in the business of changing the world. Now, to tell you a little bit about me. So I think you can guess which fish I am on this slide, and which fish all of us are, you know, because we all need to be aiming to be that red fish. Because, you know, yesterday it was interesting listening to everyone saying about how classical schools are the new fad and how everybody's into classical schools. And I was thinking, no, they're not. I mean, it might feel like that when we're in this room because we're amongst friends, but we are fighting for our lives, everybody. We need to remember this. We are fighting for Western civilization because we are at the end of the West right now, and it's only if people like us in this room keep on fighting and recognize what we are up against, it's only then that we have a chance of winning, because we have got the biggest fight of our lives on our hands. And what I really should have on this slide is a whole bunch of currents. You know, where's the slide? Where's the slide? There it is, right. What I should have on this slide is a whole bunch of currents there, because the currents are with the yellow fish, right? And they're flying over, and they're moving fast, and we are moving against the current. That's the thing. And so we've got to be ready for that fight. Now, in terms of my own fight, just to give you a bit of a context, really, so I was an ordinary teacher in London. I used to write a blog called To Miss with Love, like To Sir with Love, the book, and then the film with Sidney Poitier. And I used to write 3-4 times a week about the craziness that was going on. I've always worked in ordinary public schools in London, in the inner city. And the madness, I mean, I could spend 2 hours just telling you about the craziness that I have seen in my career, as no doubt some of you have seen. And I used to write this blog, and I called myself Miss Snuffleupagus, just to explain the Miss Snuffy point, because Snuffleupagus, of course, was in Sesame Street, and he was the big elephant mammoth in the room that no one could see. Big Bird was the only one who could see him. So I called myself Miss Snuffleupagus, and over the years on this blog, it turned into Miss Snuffy. And then in 2010, this was the days before Twitter and all of the social media stuff. People would come on the blog and they would say, oh, you sound like a real conservative. And I'd say, no, I'm not a conservative. I'm a good person. I mean, obviously I'm not a conservative. I work in the inner city and I'm helping disadvantaged children and I'm a good person on the left. And all these lefties would come on and comment about how awful I was and the things that I was writing about. And the conservatives would come on and would agree often with what I was saying. And so over years, I started thinking, well, maybe I am a conservative. And it was a huge thing for me. And eventually in 2010, so Penguin had wanted to publish my blog into a book, and then the woman at Penguin knew our education secretary at the time. And so I went to Downing Street, and they said, come and talk at our political conference. And I didn't really know much about conferences. So I went along to this conference, and I gave this speech, which is actually only about 6 minutes long, but it totally changed my life. I ended up having to leave my job. I was told I would never work in public schools again. I was just branded a real outcast, I would say, because I'd spoken at the Conservative Party conference. I mean, I'm not a member of the Conservative Party. I am what I would say is a small C conservative, but I would say there are lots of big C conservatives who are not small C conservatives. And I would say my father, for instance, is very much a man of the left, will always vote on the left, but is very much a small C conservative. So this isn't a political point, it's a values point. So I was kind of kicked out, and then the only way really to get back to working with the disadvantaged kids I'd always worked with was to set up my own school. And in 2010, we had copied all of you here in America with your charter schools. We call them free schools, but they are essentially charter schools. So I set up my own charter school, which is Michaela. It took us 3.5 years to open because of the detractors trying to stop us from opening. There were protests outside, you know, any event that we would try and organize. I would be in, and this is the madness of it all, you know, I would be in the inner city markets giving out flyers about our school, and all these black mums would come and sit at the event that I'd organized. Meanwhile, all these white middle-class people would be bussed in from outside of London to come and infiltrate and sit amongst them, sit amongst the mums who had come along to find out about the school, to then stand up and disrupt while I was talking about the possibility of a new school. And we had to move several times around London to try and find a building, and as I say, it took us 3.5 years. I mean, that's a very long story cut short. We finally opened in 2014. With a grade 7, and then we have been building up ever since, so we've now been there for 8 years. The building isn't great, you know, the building is like an old office block. We don't have a car park for staff. The car park is used as a yard for the children. We're right next to the trains. There's no sports hall, there is no grass, there is no trees. But I always say what makes a school are the people inside and what we're doing for them. And that is our school, and you would all be very welcome to visit at some point. So, Jordan Peterson came to visit our school, and he said a really good point, which was that we are playing a very sophisticated game with our pupils. And, you know, that's the thing, people call me the strictest headmistress, and it's so idiotic. I mean, like, they imagine that I'm walking up and down the corridors with whips and chains and, you know, and in detention we participate in waterboarding or something. I mean, I really, you know, it's so absurd. And when he said a game, I thought, yeah, that's it, you got it, right? You know what kids do? They push, and we push back. That's the game, right? And they're really, really clever. You know, and so sometimes, you know, we've sorted out something to do with homework or whatever, and they found a loophole. You know, one of my deputies comes to me and says, Katharine, they've got us, they've done this. And I go, what? I say, right, they've made a move, we make a move. That's how it is. They make a move, we make a move. And why are we doing it? Because we love them. because we know what children are like. They're naughty. They get up to all kinds of nonsense. And it's for us to keep them on the straight and narrow. I'm always very impressed with them when they manage to get one over on us, you know. And I was like, damn, how have they done that, you know? And I always think, well, they often win the battle, but they will never win the war, you know? And that's what's so fun. It's what's so fun about school. We love the kids, we immerse them in love, but we hold our standards high. And when we say I'm the strictest headmistress, all that means is that we have consistency. That's what that means. All of my teachers are singing from the same hymn sheet. So, a culture of intentionality and joy, that comes from Rob Jackson, actually. When he came to the school, he talked about this culture of intentionality and joy. And I thought, oh, yeah, I suppose that's what we've got. Now, what is it that gives us that? I took a photo of that quote from Roger Scruton that's on my wall in my office, which says, Aristotle's view was that there are virtues and that there are vices, and that virtues are indicative of a successful life, or living in harmony with oneself. And we need to cultivate those virtues so as not to be at odds with ourselves, so as to be able to flourish. But children don't understand this. You can only acquire virtues if you acquire the habits that are involved in them. That's key, the habits that are involved in these virtues. You must do this first by imitation, even if you don't initially know the reason you are doing it. You build up initiative. You build up purity of heart. You build up a sense of justice by encouraging children to imitate before they know why. Then gradually, as it becomes second nature to them, then they understand that indeed there is a reason for it. Too often, people overestimate children. They think they are adults. They are not. They're not adults. They're not experts. They're children. And it is for us to show them the way by exactly this, by teaching them the habits. So when we put them in detention, it's not mean. That is how you're teaching them the habits of turning up on time, bringing their pens to school, always doing their homework, etc., etc. You have a system of praise and punishment. Now, notice I've said must be a small c conservative. I genuinely think if you're not a small c conservative, you cannot be a good teacher. Okay? You just can't. And the reason is because a small c conservative believes in personal responsibility. They believe in a sense of duty towards others. They believe in gratitude and not being entitled. They believe in not indulging in victimhood. Now, if you're not a small c conservative, then you're going to allow children to indulge in victimhood. You're going to allow children to say, oh, I couldn't do my homework because X, Y, and Z was happening, or I left it on the bus, or my sister stole it, or whatever it is that they tell you. And you say, oh gosh, he's poor, or he's black, he lives in the inner city, oh my goodness, I really can't, I feel so uncomfortable with my own privilege, so I am going to let it go in this instance. That is somebody who's not a small c conservative, which means the teacher lets their children down. So you cannot be a good teacher unless you're a small c conservative. You need consistent behavior systems, praise and punishment, like I was just saying. All of my teachers are singing from the same hymn sheet. We have the same system. Merits, demerits. And one demerit is a warning. 2 demerits is the detention. 3 demerits, you're out of the lesson. It's always the same. The children can explain it to you inside out because they know it, because it's just how it is everywhere. Children love consistency. Our classrooms look exactly the same. The desks are always in rows. The teacher is always at the front. There's always a visualizer for the teacher to do their work on, you know, to show the class what we're learning. We always have booklets. All of that predictability is what allows children to be creative. That's the thing. People think that what enables creativity is chaos. It is not. It is predictability. And it doesn't seem right. It doesn't sit with you. You think, well, how can that be? How can a strict environment encourage children to think for themselves? Well, it does. Because you know what? When the environment is strict, when the children know they will not be laughed at, when the children know that they can put their hands up and really go for it, then they're going to do it. That is when they push the boat out. That is when they learn to think for themselves in a strict environment. And unfortunately, strict has a bad name these days. We think of it as, you know, being mean. It's not being mean. It's just having high standards, that's all. Just expecting the best out of the children. So, consistent teaching. Discovery learning versus knowledge on stilts. So those are the two extremes. There's discovery learning, which is asking them questions they don't know the answers to. Okay, let me stress that again, because I know everyone thinks that that's what we're meant to be doing as teachers. We're not, right? We're meant to be teaching them stuff. We are not meant to be playing guess what's in my head. If you have something in your head, and they haven't got it in their heads because you didn't put it there, then how on earth are they meant to know the answer? You know, like, they can't know it. And if they do know it, that means somebody else put that knowledge there. It wasn't you. It was somebody else. It was their mom. It was their dad. It was their uncle. And if you're teaching a bunch of kids who don't have the mom or dad, who sit at home talking about the politics of the day, giving them lots of books to read, taking them to museums on the weekend and so on, those children will not know the answer. And what happens is those children, the poorer children, the disadvantaged children in your classes, they look at little Amy at the front, who's always putting her hand up and always knows the answers because her mother teaches her those answers at home. They look at Amy and they think, gosh, I'm stupid. How come Amy knows all this stuff? It is our responsibility as teachers to teach them. Now, unfortunately, in 2023, it's the case that we believe that teaching is cheating. It's not cheating. Giving them the answer is not cheating. It's teaching. That's what teaching is. It's to tell them lots of stuff, right? So, that's discovery learning on the one hand. What do you think this is? This is a triangle or a square? Well, how are you meant to know unless you tell them it's a triangle and this is a square? And then what you do is you test for understanding. What did I just say? Is this a triangle or this is a square? And then when they know, 3 weeks later, you can test again. Is this a triangle or a square? That's what you're doing. You're testing for understanding. That's the one side, discovery learning. On the other side, you've got knowledge on stilts. And this is something for all of us to listen to in here, because we believe in knowledge in here. But the problem with knowledge on stilts is what I call knowledge on stilts. People who think that it is just about rote learning, that it is just about memorization, and it isn't. While memory needs to be there, memory needs to be part of the goal, because if they don't know it, you have failed as a teacher. So all those staff rooms across this country and across my country, you know, all those staff rooms with teachers who say, I've taught it to them 100 times and they still don't know it. Well, then yeah, you're the problem, you know? If they don't know it, then you didn't teach them properly. I mean, because the fact is, they need to know it, right? They do need to learn it. But what you don't want is just memorization of everything rote. Some things need to be learned by rote. Your times tables, your French verbs, your history dates. Some things need rote learning. Some things need teaching in a slightly different way with memory as your goal in the end, where you can then understand the stuff. You do this with it, and then the children in front of you can talk to you about the content in their own words. That is what tells you whether or not they really got it. Can they put it into their own words? Now, other things, centralized resources and homework, that's something we do. It means that teachers are not, like, one of the crazy things about teachers is that every teacher is reinventing the wheel every night in their houses at 10 p.m. and they're creating some PowerPoint and they're writing some test. And it's insane. Why isn't everybody just sharing the work so that you can spend your time doing other stuff that's required for your children to thrive? Another point to say, banning bureaucracy. Effort versus impact. So this is for leaders in the room. You know, teachers will come up to me all the time, oh, I've got this great idea, we should do this, we should do that, etc. Our role as leaders is not to always say yes. It's very tempting to say yes because, well, you have a teacher who's keen to do X, then why not let them do X? Because I need to be thinking, what would I rather they spend their time on, right? I need to be thinking strategically about the school and what I need my teachers doing and have a vision for the whole so that I have a strategy, I know what I want to deliver, and I'm not just saying yes to everything that comes my way. Because otherwise, some teachers then take on too much and then elsewhere it falls apart. You have got to help them balance it, especially if you have young teachers with you. You know, young teachers don't necessarily know. You have got to do some of the thinking for them. Now, and I say effort versus impact. So, for instance, they decide, oh, you know, let's do a bake sale. It's not like we haven't done any bake sales. We have, but I always think very carefully about them because a lot of work and the impact can be minimal. So you're always weighing it up. How much effort are my staff having to put in? How much effort are they putting in? How much impact is there going to be? And the relationships. Relationships are so important, right? And when you're strict, you can have the best possible relationships, because then you're not telling them off all the time. You're not shouting at them. You're just getting on with the learning and being able to get to know them and love the learning together. So, the best that's been thought and said. So, I mean, this is an interesting one. Staff need to believe in the bigger picture. So that's the thing about the culture in your school. They need to buy into what the school's about. And so you need to talk about this stuff. I meet with my staff once on a Monday morning for about 15 minutes and on a Wednesday afternoon for an hour and a half every single week. My new staff for an hour after school on a Thursday for a whole year, I also meet with them, where I'm talking to them about ideas, philosophy, politics. We read Roger Scruton or whoever, any number of different authors, modern authors as well, a number of American authors actually, who have written interesting things about the state of not just education, the state of the West nowadays, you know. One of my favorite books is The War on the West by Douglas Murray. That's a book that we've done, and we look at it, and we talk about it, and we say, well, what's going on? Because I need my teachers to buy into what we're delivering, because I need them to believe it in their souls. So, why? Our lives have been shaped by Western traditions. That's why it's important to be teaching this Western stuff. So dead white men. I mean, this is always, you know, why do we teach dead white men? Why does everybody want to cancel dead white men? You know, I suppose there's a lot of dead, well, no, you're not dead, but there's a lot of white men in the room. And one day, you know, death does come for us all, so there will be a number of us who will fit that category. Now, the thing is about dead white men, is everybody's always going on about how they're white men, but they miss the most important bit, which is that they are dead. You know, who cares if they're white? Who cares if they're men? The most important thing is that they're dead. And they've been dead for a long time. And because they've been dead for a long time, they have been influencing literature and our culture for a long time, because our lives are shaped by these Western traditions and by these dead white men. So Shakespeare, for instance, has been influencing literature for 400 years. And you know, the thing is, we go on about we need all these different authors, etc. You know, the thing is, I am a black author. You know, my schools aren't being, my books aren't being taught in schools. But my opinion is always, you know, if the day ever comes that my books are influencing literature for 400 years, then you'll be more than welcome to teach my books instead of Shakespeare. But until that happens, we need to be teaching Shakespeare. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that the literary canon does not belong to white people, right? So, and that's what ends up happening. You know, I had my concerns yesterday when Dana was having that conversation with the young man who came and asked about hip hop. And the reason why I had my concerns with Dana's answer was because he spoke about, he said, yeah, well, hip hop, it's poetry, great, you can teach hip hop, and that's fine. And it was sort of left at that. And the problem with that is, I tell you what happens. The black kids in the inner city get taught hip-hop, while the rich white kids in the suburbs get taught Shakespeare. That's what ends up happening, and that's wrong. I have no problem with having some bits of hip-hop in there if you want to teach, but I need our standards to be high. And it's all very well us saying, keep the standards high, but if we're then talking about teaching hip-hop, what happens is, it's the poor kids, it's the black kids who end up with the hip-hop. And especially when you think about what's happened to hip-hop, we didn't even distinguish hip-hop from 1985 to 2023. There's a big, big difference. In fact, hip-hop and drill and grime and rap and all of that from nowadays ruins the lives of young black boys, right? It ruins them. So I don't want to hear us talking about teaching hip-hop. I want to hear us talking about how kids can access all of this classical stuff. My kids are from the inner city. Many of them haven't even chosen to come to our school. They just go to our school because we're nearby, and the admissions process is such that they've ended up at our school. And yet, they stand up and they recite the poem If by Kipling. You know, once I had this journalist in, and he heard them reciting the poem by Kipling, and he said, "Are you just trying to be controversial, Katharine?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, why are you getting them to do Kipling? Because, you know, he's a racist." And I said, I don't know about what you're talking about. It's a great poem. I said, it's a great poem, and then the kids love it, and it's so emblematic of our values. You know, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. Every time they go to a sports match, every time they go for an exam, we say, if you can meet with triumph and disaster. And like, it's just another way of telling them, don't indulge in victimhood. It's another way of saying, don't be dramatic, you know? And how great is that? So, anyway, other points on there. The eternal truths at the heart of the human condition. I mean, this is important. You know, why do we go for the dead white men? Not only dead white men. I mean, I have some other people on there like Dubois and C.L.R. James and Stuart Hall. I mean, there are lots of other alternatives. You want to talk to me about Frederick Douglass? Fine. Don't talk to me about hip-hop. And Maya Angelou, she, you know, really sums this up perfectly. You know, when she first read Shakespeare, she thought he was a black woman because he so understood the plight that black women have. And absolutely, it's universal. And to deny that to children who are disadvantaged is to disadvantage them even more. So, one of the issues with, you know, why do we want to involve dead white men? Because of the history of our people, when writers of color are writing, they're often talking about man's inhumanity to man, right? And I understand why, because that has been our history. But if that's all we're studying, because there's so much more to life than just man's inhumanity to man, so you've got to involve the dead white men. And we have a shared humanity across racial divides. So it's interesting, Katherine Mansfield, I was named after Katherine Mansfield, who was a writer, who lived in England, and then she was born in New Zealand. And my father named me after Katherine Mansfield. Now, you know, he didn't think to himself, she's white, so I can't name my brown daughter after this white woman. It didn't occur to him. He just thought about New Zealand. He loved the diaspora. He's from Guyana and loves Britain. And just he thought about this idea of the diaspora and wanted to name his child after an author who had lived in New Zealand. Other things, yes, you need to know it before you can criticize it. You know, the fact is that any great writer, they all get to know the classics. And any revolutionary, Nelson Mandela went to a traditional school. Stokely Carmichael, who coined the term Black Power and was a Black Panther, went to the very traditional Bronx Science High School. Every single person who is successful has had a traditional education. That is how it works. And yet, the people who have got the traditional educations, in England, they go to the top private schools. They get themselves the top traditional education. And then they get into the business of education and dismantle it for those in the inner city, so that they prevent those in the inner city from having the same advantages that they themselves have had that have enabled them to make successes of their lives. And the whole thing is so outrageous. Why are they doing it? Because they feel so guilty about their own privilege. So the best thing that everybody can do is get over themselves, get over this idea of privilege, and do what is right for children. So, I just have those three at the bottom, Newton, Darwin, and Einstein, because of the idea of, let's say, in science, saying, we're not going to tell you about them. We're just not going to we're not going to tell you about Darwin because, you know, he's a dead white man. You know, it's the humanities who always get hit. The humanities get hit first with all this stuff because it seems easier and it's more difficult to make it really clear why these things are important in the humanities. So, leading with gusto and belief. You want to be the best. Always be the best. Be the best at whatever it is you do. I have down there, be 100%. I should have said be 110%. I was thinking that this morning when I was up at 3 a.m. and I was texting my teachers in school in London, and I was giving advice and doing various things. And then at 5 a.m. I went to the gym in the hotel, and do you know, it was packed. It was packed, and I thought, gosh, Phoenix is obviously the place to be. I mean, they're all working out at 5 a.m. This is unbelievable. And I was so inspired. You've always got to be the best. I was in there this morning. You know, I even increased my time on the treadmill, and I thought, yeah, I did it, right? And tomorrow I'm going back. I'm going to beat that time again. And that is how you always need to be thinking about everything that you do. You need to be brave, because this is a fight. Like I say, we are fighting for our lives here. You've got to be brave. You've got to be brave enough to ignore the haters, ignore the idiots who tell you that you're a racist or you're a this, that, and the other. They call me all kinds of names, including strictest headmistress. You know, the fact is, who cares what they say? You know your goal. Keep your eyes on the prize and keep moving towards it. And you do that through being honest and candid. We have a whole candor system in our school, which I won't go into because I'll run out of time, but this candid system, it gets everybody talking in a straightforward way, and it means feedback really has impact with the staff. We are clear, we are consistent at all times. Everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet, and you need to be everywhere. So even though I'm not in my school today, I was at 3 a.m. I was there on that WhatsApp, sending it, you know, instructions, saying do this, do that, etc. You need to be everywhere. You need to be all-knowing. That is what you need to be as a leader. And frankly, all teachers, all you teachers in here, you're all leaders. You got to have eyes in the back of your heads. Why do we have visualizers at school? We have visualizers because, so visualizer, you know, you have it and you write on it, and then it's up on the board when you're writing on it here. When you're writing like this, you can keep your eyes on the kids at all times. Never turn your back, ever, right? You have got to have systems, which means that you know everything and you are everywhere. And believe in the good fight. Work hard, be kind. So I've said that on there because work hard, be kind is our motto. And we stole it from Kip. Kip, you will know, used to have work hard, be nice. And I thought, that's great. And so we had to change it a bit because obviously we couldn't copy it exactly. So we changed it to work hard, be kind. And it's such a great idea that all of your kids who are passing through your care are at least doing those two things, working hard and being kind. And then, of course, with George Floyd and the summer of 2020, Kip came under fire and they fell, you know? They fell. That's the point. This is a fight and the current is against us and we got to fight back. And Kip fell. And I am never going to fall. Our motto is always going to be work hard, be kind. Nobody's going to tell me that teaching children to be kind to each other is somehow racist. It's absolute nonsense. This idea that we're teaching black children to be subservient. My teachers in the main are white, and they understand that, and we are teaching children to be kind and to be nice to each other, and we are never going to apologize for that, and we are never going to change that motto, and everybody in this room needs to think in exactly the same way, and you need to continue to fight. Now, what I do with my staff is I inspire them. I do things. Now, I can't, like Dana, just like, I mean, it was amazing. He's got like so much poetry in his head, and he's just able to just say all this poetry, and it's the most amazing thing. I can't do that. But what I can do for you is I can give you Russell Crowe. I can give you Gladiator. And this is the kind of thing that I play for my staff. I play the much longer versions, but I'm going to play this one for you, which is so brilliant. Can we hear him? I'm not hearing anything. Hi, guys at the back. Oh, great.
3 weeks from now, I will be harvesting my crops. Imagine where you will be, and it will be so. Hold the line. Stay with me. If you find yourself alone, riding in green fields with the sun on your face, do not be troubled, for you are in Elysium, and you're already dead! Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
Right. Absolutely. Hold the line. Stay with me. Hold the line. That's the thing that we never do. That's the thing. We fall down when it comes to parents. We fall down in the classroom when, you know, so-and-so's misbehaving and we don't want to send them out of the class. We fall down when they don't give you the homework or it's not what you want and you let your standards drop. You need to hold the line. Always hold the line. And they will always push back. The children will push back, the parents will push back, the media will push back against you. Everything, our entire culture is always going to push back. You have got to hold the line. And as I say to my staff, they need to stay with me. That is how you win the war. You hold the line and you stay with me. Now, you're all very welcome to come and see us at Michaela and have lunch with us. You eat lunch with the children, you have a tour with the children and so on. It's only a flight away. You are very, very welcome. You just sign up on the website. And that's me on Twitter. There's a documentary about the school, which the producer has a website, strictustheadmistress.com. You know, she charges $5 or $6 or something, but you can watch it on there. And if you can't come, you can at least see the school in action. I've got 12 rules on there that I think are required to raise happy children, which you can watch. And if you're really interested, there's our book. I saw it here, actually, which I thought, wow, Rob Jackson really is on it here, having our book there. And you can also see our book. Now, I'm going to end with a video of our school so you can see a little bit of what our school is like, which was just made with a handheld video by one of our teachers just one day. And you'll see, well, you'll just see what our school is like.
I found a love for me. Well, darling, just dive right in. Follow my lead. Well, I found a girl, beautiful and sweet. Well, I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what it was. I will not give you up this time. Darling, just kiss me slow. Your heart is all I own, and in your eyes you're holding mine. Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass, listening to our favorite song. When you said you looked a mess, I whispered underneath my breath, but you heard it. Darling, you look perfect tonight. Well, I found a woman, baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass, or listening to our favorite song. I have faith in what I see. Now I know I have met an angel in person, and she looks perfect. I don't deserve this. You look perfect tonight.
Hold the line, stay with me. What we do in life echoes in eternity. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for that rousing reminder of why we're here and what we have to do in holding the line. We're going to take some questions from our audience, and we've got numerous folks online in the virtual space, and so I will be looking at this not because I need to check my texts, but rather to hear from our audience. But also for those in this room, you've got first dibs. So let me welcome you to line up right here at the microphone if you've got questions for Catherine.
Don't be shy, come on. Somebody has to go first.
That's
Go
right.
on. Great. The lady in red. Brilliant.
Thank you so much, really. Thank you for the work you're doing. I'm the principal of a school, or was the principal of a school that has something of a population that you're working with as well. I want to ask you a question. You moved over the issue about the teachers love children. I want to know how you hire people who love children, who are motivated by an ethic of love and not an ethic of power.
That's interesting. It's interesting that you say an ethic of power. I don't think I've ever known any teachers who have an ethic of power. I think what ends up happening is that out of helplessness, because teachers haven't been taught the right ways of how to manage a class, they're not being supported properly, that they end up just desperately trying to get the kids to do what they want, and so they're angry and they're shouting and all the rest of it. But I don't think anybody goes into teaching because they want to hold power over kids. I think the main problem with teachers is that they're too soft. I have to do a lot of work to try and steel my teachers to get them to a point where they're going, yeah, I'm going to give a detention for not having a pen, I'm going to give a detention for not doing the homework, and I'm going to see this through. And they have to change quite a lot. So I don't think the power is the issue. I think they just haven't been trained properly. And also, leadership teams in schools let teachers down. They don't see it as their role to properly support teachers by getting consistency across the staff. So people just show up. Whenever the media talk about teachers, schools, and what's wrong, they blame teachers. They ought to be blaming the principals. That's who they should be blaming, because we are responsible, right? If there's a fire in my school today, and something goes wrong, that's on me. It doesn't matter that I'm not there. It's on me. And we leaders are being paid more than the teachers. We need to lead, and we need to take responsibility. And it is for us to be training the teachers. Now, of course, look, principals are totally undermined by the unions. They're undermined by the terrible teacher training that's out there. So I have to retrain all of my teachers when they come to me and teach them how to teach in the Michaela way and how to get the Michaela mindset. And that's the thing about the Western tradition and getting people on board with that idea. I give them books by, American people like Jason Riley, Please Stop Helping Us, or like, there's so many books that, that conservative writers, they would be considered conservative, to move my teachers away from this sense of, I'm a bit of a lefty and I really just want to make excuses for the kids because I feel guilty about my privilege. That is what I would say is the real problem.
We do have a question here from the virtual audience. Many students in the US are lagging behind grade level in mathematics, reading, and so forth. So how do you handle remedial instruction, especially, again, managing kind of student or parental despair, like frustration?
Yeah, so, we might take kids out of certain lessons and have extra smaller classes to catch kids up with their reading, for instance, or catch them up with their maths. Obviously, if you have large numbers of them, then you can just teach them, so it doesn't matter. If you have a whole class of kids who can't read, in a way that's easier than having 5 or 6 of them in there who can't read, you just then you change what you're teaching them, and you always address kids at where they're at. So wherever it is they are, you then teach them to get them the next level, to the next level, the next level. Children want to feel successful, and so if you teach them properly, and this has to, I could spend ages talking about the quality of explanations and the quality of your questioning when running your classroom. If you do that well and you have excellent discipline, all of your children will make progress in the class. And the thing that all of you teachers in here need to remember is always judge yourself by the 5 worst children in your class. Do not judge yourself by the 5 best. Judge yourself by the 5 worst. The 5 best will always be good, no matter who's teaching them, right? It's the 5 worst you need to be thinking, have I got them on board?
Question right here.
Hello, my name is Norman Gonzalez. I'm with John Adams Academies. We're charter schools in Northern California. Thank you so much for coming across the pond to be with us.
Sure.
Your remarks were inspiring, and as you closed, it resonated with me of hold the line. and stay with me, right? That really resonates because we are in a fight for our lives, and we've been fighting a war that we didn't know we were in for decades, and we've been losing because we didn't know we were fighting it.
Yeah.
And so thank you for all the work that you're doing. So one of the things that we really approach in our academies is this notion that culture is going to be that foundational thing that determines your success. Mm-hmm. If you lose your culture, then you're not going to be able to teach kids because you will have that chaos that you spoke about.
Yep.
So one of the questions that I have, and you started to kind of touch on it as you were getting into this last answer about supporting kids, we have report cards, we have data analysis, we have all kinds of testing that determines the academic achievement that our scholars are getting. But what is the report card that you use to determine the success of your culture? How are you holding the school and the leadership accountable, and what's your report card for culture?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's really good. I'm not even sure I can answer it. The thing about culture is that you feel it, don't you? You feel it, and you need to be taking the temperature all of the time. So recently, I just taking the temperature. So how do I do that? So I'm listening to what my teachers are saying. That session that I do every week, hour and a half on a Wednesday, then an hour on a Thursday with my new teachers. I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, how much are they coming on board with what I'm saying? How much are they with me here? And I started to get worried because I could see that I didn't have enough, and I'm losing a few staff who've been with me for years and years. At the end of this year, a couple are going on maternity leave, a couple are leaving. So I know I'm being hit on that, and I need my newer staff to really get there to make up for that loss, and I'm worried about September. So now I've built into my days where I'm meeting with my teachers, 2 of them at a time, and we're having discussions about all of these kinds of ideas, and they come to me with articles they've read or books they've read or things that I've sent out. So, and I'm constantly talking to my staff. So this morning I was sending a couple of articles to my staff, and I'm always commenting. Notice how this is the case. Look at the victimhood mentality. Look at the indulgence. Look at how the solution is always the state and not the family. Whatever it is that I'm commenting on, and I'm bombarding them all the time with this stuff, and then I'm listening to how they respond. And if I'm making the judgment of, oh, I don't think they're quite there, then I involve myself more. You've got to have a sense in your head of what your goal is, your vision for the school. Where do you want everybody to be? I actually have a kind of chart where I've kind of put people, and I'm like, okay, this person I need to move to here, this person I need to move to there, and I'm always thinking about how I'm developing each member of staff. Any member of my team, you ask me, I'd be able to tell you what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, what they're working on, where I'm trying to get them to. I know them inside out. And the key thing for principals is that principals always make the mistake saying that they're there for the kids. They should not be there for the kids. They need to be there for the staff, always. Because as a principal, I cannot be there for 800 kids. I'm one person. I can be there for my 60, 70 staff, and then my staff can be there for the kids. But I have to be there to support them and develop them in order for the kids to be well supported.
Here's a related question I'd like to take from our live stream audience, and then we'll take one more from the floor. In what ways does a school culture start to permeate community or the families, right? Are there ways in which you intentionally cultivate what you've just described with the faculty and push it into the larger community?
Yeah, well, we are in the inner city. So, look, I think all of the families get better. And I say this to them when they arrive, they come and I say, you haven't met my standards yet. So you may think you're a good mom or dad, but you're not. I'm like, that's what I say to them. I say, you're not, and however good you think you are, I'm telling you, you're not good enough, and you need to get better. And you need to think of me as a personal trainer. When you go to the gym, push-ups are hard. Being a parent is hard, so I'm here to help you get better, because you need to be better than where you are right now. And I'm very serious, and they look and they laugh nervously, and I say, you think I'm joking? And I'm not joking. And then they go, ooh, and you can see them kind of go, ooh. So I think everybody gets better. But we have some very disadvantaged families, you know, and, you know, we have serious problems. I mean, we're in the inner city, you know, kids turn up on bikes, masked up, carrying knives. I mean, like, this is the inner city. But everybody is getting better, and the kids get better. So what ends up happening is that the parents say, it's amazing. She's thanking me now for making her dinner. You know, he's looking after his little sister. You know, they become different people because of the values that we are instilling in them. And Dana said yesterday about how, you know, it's not just about giving them knowledge, it's about the whole child. And it very much is that. So I find parents will gradually buy in more to what we do because they can see the changes in their child and how their child is improving. I mean, I remember once giving, because I give talks like this, so the parents come in. So our parents' evenings are not parents' evenings where they're coming and talking to the individual teachers. They come in and sit down, and then I give them advice about how to be a better parent, essentially. And I once gave a talk, and I played Gladiator and stuff like that, and I was giving, you know, I give advice, what time to put in the bed, have an alarm clock, don't let them use their phones, et cetera, and I tell the parents, this isn't good enough, you've got to get better, blah, blah, blah. And one of the mums, at the end, she came up, and sadly, this boy's father had died a year before, and she came to me, and she was crying, and she said, you know, you're right, Ms. Birbalsingh, you're right. I don't get out of bed every morning because I just can't, and it's just so hard. But I've got to do it for my boy. I've got to do what you're saying. I've got to find it inside of me, to find the strength to get up in the morning and be my boy's mother. And, you know, that's, you're just there helping them be a better version of themselves today than they were yesterday.
One last question, please.
Hello, I'm Meg Salazar. I'm with Liberty Commons School in Fort Collins, Colorado, charter school. Related to that last question, you answered mine already in part. Last year we had a speaker that talked about classics for all and how really those of us that need it the most in society are the people of perhaps lower socioeconomic status, but an issue we have here in our classical charter schools, I think, is it's not always accessible. And you started to answer that a bit, but what would you say to a school, a charter school, that demands so much of the parents and rules out the parents that don't have the bandwidth to make the choice and to dedicate that kind of time? They don't have the time, they don't have the means to read to their kids, to help them with their homework, to volunteer at the school, and then they have to rule out that option.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that, you know, it's the one criticism, I suppose, I have of the charter school movement. I suppose, I mean, on the one hand, I think it's quite, I don't know, America's, I was saying to somebody yesterday that America's this, you know, you're like the best and the worst all at once in everything. It's really weird. It is, honestly, because from those of us looking outside, we look at America and think, oh my goodness, we don't want to be like that. But then, on the other hand, you're leading the way in so many ways. I mean, I look at all of this stuff here, like the sponsors, and I think nothing like this exists in Britain. Nothing. I couldn't believe it yesterday. I was going around thinking, my goodness, this is just amazing, you know. So the thing is that, look, I think if it's the case that you are teaching children who would otherwise, all of them, be just fine without you, then how much are you actually contributing to making the world a better place? You know, you want to be able to be 85 one day and to look back and to be able to say, I did something, I contributed, I made the world into a better place. And I'm not saying you need to go into the inner city necessarily and teach, but you need to let some of those kids in, and then you need to find a way to support them. Because if you're depending entirely on the families, and I'm not saying the families don't have anything to do with it, but if you're depending entirely on the families making up for your deficits in the school, then, as the lady who just spoke has just said, you're only helping those who are already in a position to help themselves. And I think it is incumbent on all of us to help those who cannot help themselves. And you got to find some way of being able to do that. And when I said about being the best, you know, you're not the best. You're just not. You know, you're good, but you're not the best. You're the best when you're able to do that. And that should be your goal, and figuring out how to do that. And that means about looking at the quality of your explanations, the quality of your questioning, the discipline in your school, you know, how do you hold the line, you know, all of that stuff. You do that well, you'll be able to support the more disadvantaged children.
Well, Katharine, we're going to hold the line, thanks to your edification. Join me, please, in thanking Katharine.
Thank you.
for her time with us. Katharine will be joining a panel shortly of other school leaders to talk a bit more about school culture, so you'll have opportunities if you're interested in that. Look in your program. We want to thank Bria Classical Schools. They are our sponsor for this particular session. So thankful for all of our sponsors, but delighted to have Bria with us. So make sure you go and take a look at what they've got going in fact, one of the more underserved neighborhoods in New York and the metro area there. Again, 9:30 is going to be the startup for the next set of sessions. We will join or reconvene here at 12:30. Lunch will be provided outside, and we will have a plenary to discuss how do we support our teachers. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.